start?
Yeah, because it's maybe some of the guests that already left.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that Jason is nearby.
You know who's Jason?
Yeah, I'm trying to put the face with him, so I'm just looking. 1 second.
Whenever you spot him, start it as soon as possible.
Okay, sure. I guess I should see where Ian is. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we will be starting momentarily, so we will be starting at any moment now. Thank you. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Hope you enjoyed the final break of the day, and now we're ready for the final presentation. It's titled Grow Fast or Die Slow. What are the tech startups' options for growth? So this will hark back to our mock negotiation earlier and a lot of the concerns that we've heard throughout the day in the program regarding essentially proper preparation and moving a startup company forward. So we have a great speaker today to present this topic. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Mr. Jason Chiu. He's the founder and CEO of CherryPix. He's a leading mobile tech and mobile commerce innovator in the Asia Pacific region. He's also an industry icon for his entrepreneurial success, including a business model that was featured in the Harvard Business School case study. He embodies the spirit of this program and the co-operatives, innovative intellectuals, because he mentors and he also assists with a number of startups, including as being an investor, both in Hong Kong and in Silicon Valley. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Mr. Jason Chiu.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for the great introduction. Saved me some time. In the software, online services, and internet world, have you thought about growing slow means dying slow? There is no such thing as growing slowly or gradually. In fact, the very first notion when I first came across it was from a McKinsey study. The McKinsey study 2 years ago inspired me on a concept where you either grow fast or you die slow. There's nothing in between. Very, very few. I thought about it, reflected on my journey in the last 16 years, and I found that there were periods where I grew fast, and there were periods where I actually grew slower. But when I come to think about it, I was actually dying slowly. In technology, or in many things today, if you stand still, people get past you. If you stand still, your chance of survival reduces. If you stand still, you are being obsolete. This is what we're talking about. So what are the tech companies' options for growth? I hope that I can share some of the insights from this McKinsey study and what I've encountered and observed in my own journey. Some supports that theory, some adds to it, and some disagree. First of all, I think the MC already introduced cherry picks. I just add 2 things onto it. Put it in perspective. Yes, we are an old startup, but we try to reinvent ourselves all the time, transforming constantly into the contemporary state of startups. I'm not young, but I think young. We are a company of about 300 professionals. Our mother company, the parent company, is actually 6,000. We have about 16 technology patents, 3 to 6 products that are generating tractions, and we hope to scale up. So we are in a stage where we still look at growth very aggressively. We have been very fortunate in 2014 and 2016 that we got acquired twice by the same company, NetDragon, a technology company listed in Hong Kong, a giant from China, originally in gaming, now in e-learning and O2O. Obviously, they specialize in things like virtual reality and augmented reality. Apart from the BAT, the Baidu, Alibaba, and Tencent of the world, they are probably one of the leading tech companies that wants very much to go global. In 2014, they acquired our services solutions business, and 2016, they acquired our technology and product business. I tell you all these because it puts things in perspective of what we are going to talk about when it comes to growth. So the journey began in year 2000 when a 28-year-old strategy consultant from Deloitte decided that had enough of travel, won some friends back, and want to pursue a dream, actually do something. So together with a few friends, we started in Shangwan, an office that is literally the size of a garage on a 12th floor space. There was, 2.5G network, no Wi-Fi, very primitive setup. And from there, we've gone through lots of ups and downs. And until today, I have an office also on 12th floor, but in a spaceship in Fujian. This is the headquarters of NetDragon, which you can easily look up in Google Earth. But problem hasn't changed. I still need to continue to grow. We cannot afford to stand still. On the first page of the presentation, you see this little Celtic sign. It's a single spiral. It stands for growth and expansion. Well, you can explain it in many mathematical ways, but today we're going to look at a study from McKinsey and see what that tells us. McKinsey looked at 3,197 companies listed currently. Well, the time of the study is 2013. So they look at all these listed companies in technology sector, excluding hardware company, mostly in software, online services, and internet. And they found that out of these listed companies, since 1980, only 953 or 30% achieve 100 million revenue. And all the way fast forward, those who make 1 billion revenue, now this is different from unicorn. Unicorn is 1 billion valuation. This is 1 billion revenue. And when we talk about growth, we're not referring to growth in valuation. We're referring to growth in revenue, okay? Only 3% achieve that. And even less than 1% achieve the 4 billion revenue mark. If you talk to the biggest ecosystem, like the Waterloo-Toronto ecosystem, the Silicon Valley ecosystem, Communitech, these guys, they always measure by growth in revenue. And they want to produce, in 4 years, a percentage of revenue, a percentage of companies that they incubate that goes over 100 million. And then the next goalpost is 1 billion. Now, they look at this and say, what did the 19 company do right to make 4 billion in revenue, then the rest of the 3,000 didn't do? So they look at it, they study everything, strategy, business model, they come up with one answer. Trump, sorry, not Trump. Growth trumps all. It's not cost, it's not how much money you have, it's not how smart you are in the business model, it's not how good your product is. All those are important. But the most important thing is actually growth. So you cannot afford not to look at growth in one single quarter, because they have a study later on I'll show you that once you slow down, only a fraction, less than 20%, comes back to high growth. Growth actually yields greater returns. Initially, it sounds pretty intuitive or pretty straightforward, but actually, no, growth in revenue yields greater returns, all right? Growth in revenue gives you longer-term success, all right? So growth in revenue does not come from cutting costs. Growth in revenue, quarter by quarter, entitles you to be a super growth high-tech company, will actually increase greater the return and increase your chance for long-term success. And even more intriguing, as I went on into the study, I found that they have a few key findings which I would like to share and juxtapose with my own experience. Growth matters more than margin and cost structure. I think a lot of you might disagree with that. I did initially. Because if you don't look at your cost structure or margin, how can you build a company that can sustain? In fact, their theory is growth in revenue trumps all. Do that first. Make that work, worry about the next factor later. So they actually take those 3,000 companies apart and look at the costs. They look at the cost of goods sold, the R&D costs, the marketing and services, or marketing and sales costs, and the general costs. So this encapsulates, if you have a deep pocket, you invest in marketing, buying the market, you invest in R&D. So in theory or traditional wisdom, we know that conventionally we all know if you have more money, you have higher chance to succeed, right? Well, if you look at these few thousand companies, the color of the dots means how big they are, right? The biggest is the one in green, medium is blue, and the white is the smallest company in revenue terms. And they found absolutely no correlation. So company A invests more in R&D, doesn't guarantee a higher chance to succeed. Company B puts more in marketing and sales, doesn't guarantee more chance to succeed. So to me, that means deep pocket doesn't guarantee or have no correlation, nothing to do with growth. I need growth. So it's better to be lean than have a lot of money. I have mentioned this in many occasions. I thought I made so many mistakes in my journey that it was not even funny. I was looking for validation, but instead, I focused on valuation. I raised more money than I need, and then I used money to solve my problem. So that was, in fact, what this is telling me. It's always better to be lean. And I can talk about my failure of being well-funded. Every entrepreneur that I meet these days, I mentor about 20. I invested in about 15 as angel investors. Half of them said they need to raise funds. May be true, but most of them have misplaced their priorities. Being well-funded is good, but being well-funded is dangerous. I raised about $20 million from VCs from Japan, China, and Korea to do one thing, mobile social media. That was back in 2004 to 2007, before smartphone appears. It was booming time. The plan was impeccable. I have a great team. We have 900 people. 20 million US dollar launching a service called Cyworld Taiwan in Taiwan, and also launching a mobile social media Youdian in China. Both are very similar, essentially doing one thing. And in Taiwan, we got the partnership with SK Telecom. How could I lose? In China, I have a lot of competitors. They were all very small, including Tencent School and Xiaonei. Well, in the war of fighting with Goliath, David needs to be very fast. David needs to have a special skill. David does not need to have a lot of money or does not need to be very strong. So I was the David, but I was actually putting money and strength behind my plan to go to market and fight Goliath. I got mistaken. Goliath was defeated because David used a sling stone on the forehead without any force. So skills is more important. Money, in most cases, is actually not. So I reflected. There was a big lesson. You know, we went from 900 people down to 20. I sold the China business, liquidate the Taiwan business, and fire a whole bunch of people. Of course, the China business that I sold eventually got sold again to Renren. In the hands of Renren, they went to IPO. So the danger that I mentioned is about not being hungry enough. We should have stayed lean. Maybe we should have raised fund, 10 million, 5 million. Maybe we should just stage it. Definitely not 20. And having 20 million in the pocket with Korea, Japan, and China investor means too many battle lines, including internal battle lines. I have a board meeting. Every time it's like United Nations. I need translators. There are 2 tables. Pretty difficult to manage when you are so busy. And most important of all, think validation. Validation is not valuation. And focus on growth. The other thing McKinsey talked about, which this is highly debatable, but I think there's some truth in it, is that growth happens in phases. There's a prelude phase, meaning you think you're doing the business, you think that is the business that you are in. In fact, it's not. It's just the prelude. And then there's a main act, Act 1. And then there's an Act 2 because, you know, there's a lot of technology companies that couldn't survive after their initial success. Internet companies especially. A lot of companies get caught with their pants down when technology changes and inflection points happens. That's between Act 1 and Act 2. Well, was it academic only or is it true? So I was thinking about, you know, obviously I can talk for a long time to analyze which phase we're in, but I think in short, very simply put, we're in Act 1. In Prelude, basically you're testing the product. We have 2 businesses, one in solutions business, the other in product business. This happily validates what we're trying to do. A lot of people, especially the startups in the current stage, talked about doing product. They never want anything to do with projects. But most of the mistakes that these startups made is the lack of domain knowledge into the industry or the solutions that they're trying to build, the problems and pain points that they're trying to solve. They can be more accurate if it is a consumer pain point. But if it is a business pain point, they are usually off the mark. Why? Because it's very simple. You haven't really been in that industry doing a solutions, doing a project. No matter if one-off, unpleasant, or just services that can't scale. The point is, you do this, figure out a product, and then you scale that. So what we are doing is, we'll never give up solution businesses. We'll do projects forever. It serves me 2 purposes. One, the prelude of any great product. We need to understand what the industry is about. We're in retail, we're in airport, transportation. These industries, we have to know the pain points. We have to know what it means for a product to work for consumer and for the business. Second, it helps me train the best people. We're not in Silicon Valley. People on the street are not 5-year skilled labor in iPhone or in VR development. In fact, we are training the best. We're supplying to the industry. how do you supply that if you hire the person and that's the first experience they have but developing your product? We put them in the toughest test, the fire to forge, great materials to build. Act 1 narrows the focus of what you have learned and change the business model so that it becomes something that can truly scale. Now, obviously, these are hypotheses. You don't know whether it will succeed or not. So basically, you use that, productize it, make the business model work, try to sell to more customers, build a base, consistently develop and deliver revenue. Now, at this point, consider IPO, not because you want to exit. IPO actually serves only one purpose, in my view, not because you want to be rich, because you want to get financing to make things big. Now, a lot of companies do not view it that way. I would not comment further, but I think IPO's purpose is really singular. Act 2 is something where when your first act product encounters a saturation in market or a plateauing in growth or an obsolete in technology advancement, then you need an Act 2. It's kind of difficult to think about. It's not referring to another product. It's Act 2. So it could be the same product pivoting to an ecosystem or becoming a platform or changing to something else. Or it could be a different industry. There are more details later on. So McKinsey went on and talked about Act 1. There are 5 enablers, according to them, to do Act 1 right. The first one is to pick the right market. Well, kind of motherhood statement, but I think it's true. In our words, in the lean startup world and in our current language, we call it product market mix. Get that right, at least in theory. Second, monetization, that's the business model. Third, rapid adoption, that's growth basically, but looking at how people would actually get exposed, aware, and use your product, right? Give you feedback and then you loop. Keep stealth, it's very interesting. They keep talking about, okay, look at Intel and look at all these companies. Their early success come from, they don't tell anybody about their alpha, beta test version until they become a product that is good and then out. Now, today's internet world, it's not like that. You're doing a public beta forever, right? So I kind of disagree, but I do agree if you have some technology disruptive ideas being implemented, you want to keep it stealth for a while before you unwrap it. Kickstarter is a great place, not for those who want to sell, for a great place for those who want to get ideas from. Right? How many times you go to Kickstarters and thinking that you want to see some cool products and ideas, right? And then incentive. Now, putting that onto our cherry picks journey, we look at this. We call ourselves Charian, people who work at cherry picks. So we have a test, well publicized, internally with users for many years. Because of the lessons that we almost went bankrupt in 2007, 2008, we said, okay, mobile social media, we're not going to do it anymore. We will never do something like this. Although WhatsApp is great, Cake is wonderful, Tencent even invests 50 million there. We can't do that. It's too dangerous. We've done that. Let's do something that has 3 major criteria. Sorry for the formatting. The first is, whatever we do, if we agree to go ahead, it must constitute best user experience with the good product market fit. If we're not happy with that, this product fail, it won't see the light of the day. We won't do this product. Second, this product must have high technology IP. It has a high technology barrier. 技術含量要高, right? It's not just for preventing others to copy. There is nothing to prevent that. But it is something that you want to make sure your intellectual properties have time to work. The third, well-defined business model. It could be wrong, but it needs to be well-defined. So with these 3, we'll always come up with something, even something like iButterfly. It has a business model from day 1. In fact, it was profitable. Right? We could be wrong and no one uses it, but if it works, it already has a business model. There's no such thing as get the user first and then figure out what to do. Or today's term, get the user first, we generate data. And the other side is the last 3, To me, that's internal. So to get growth, you get the product and the market things right, get a good product, but your alignment inside the company needs to be very strong. In my humble journey, we work best when we are around 50 to 80 people. I don't know, maybe it's my leadership limitation. Now we are 250. At one point, we had 900. Now, to manage all these people, without decreasing efficiency and speed and being lean, how do we do that? 3 years ago, we start to come up with an idea. Let's actually break the company down to 50 to 80 people teams and call them SEAL teams, Navy SEALs, as the US built their best trained military to fight the Vietnamese War. So we want to build the SEAL teams so that in a company, there is no department. You get a business card from my colleagues. It says sales or business development. Actually, these are wrong titles. We actually don't have that. These titles are just for you to understand. We only have titles that this guy belongs to one of the SEAL teams. And the SEAL team's idea is very simple. We are one of the rare species in the industry of mobile app development that has a dragon boat team. In fact, this dragon boat has been paddling for last 6 years. So paddling is something we're good at. So speed and run, paddle, nervous, anxious. Paddling as a team, surprisingly, doesn't require strength. We're programmers. We cannot fight the firefighters. Firefighters' strength is great, but paddle in symphony, in harmony, in the same way is the best force. That is the secret of Dragon Boat. That's why we love this sport. So formation is number one. We also look at, other than formation, me and my management team needs to provide vision. And as the last point of McKinsey's recommendation, the reward and recognition scheme, we have share, we don't have share option. You get share, you get money. That's it. When we had the exit in 2014, everyone in the company get 5-digit to 9-digit cash. That's it. Share option? None. We don't talk about that. And the left and right paddlers, standards and talent development. I don't think we are the best. I don't think we have done enough, but these are areas that we want to improve on. We're learning from a lot of peers. We're learning from other companies overseas. We also see a lot of practices from Google, Facebook, and LinkedIn, and so on. Some work, some don't. And some may not be for our culture. So come back to SEAL team. So for these SEAL teams, it is self-contained. It has all the functions, and each SEAL team focuses on one industry and one product. So you will be surprised that we have maybe 2 or 3 products, but actually totally separate, as if they are startup companies under the umbrella of Cherry Picks. So maybe just 4 or 5 companies under the same umbrella. That's how you look at our company. And these are the SEAL teams. They are all in the names of Greek and Roman gods. All have a meaning related to their industry. So we're building loyalty and cohesiveness of team members with the SEAL teams, not with the company. Well, first with the SEAL team, and then second with the company. And we encourage creativity and innovation in several ways. Very luckily, NetDragon is very liberal in many ways. You see their headquarters being built like a spaceship. They have a lot of measures and practices and HR policies that are quite progressive. For example, there is no concept of colleagues. Everyone is a classmate, 同學, and we are here to learn. We encourage the classmates to try new things and embrace failure. No one gets fired for doing something wrong. You get fired if you do something wrong and don't voice out. IP policy to highlight invention. I came from a university in Canada called Waterloo. Waterloo is only 59 years old, but it is one of the greatest technology companies, universities in the world. Why? Because university professors and students and PhDs can invent something, and the IP rights belongs to them. University doesn't charge a single dime. They bet on when a company gets spin off like BlackBerry, they'll come back and donate 300 million Canadian dollar to build a nano quantum computing lab. That's their model. We replicate that model, and we hope that some of these IPs and inventions by the classmates can eventually be something that make them, great. It's very funny. I was talking to the dean. They are visiting Hong Kong this week. We have two cases where some undergrads, engineers, got funded and started companies before they graduate. And they hire their supervisor, PhDs, and their professors in the company. So it's a role reversal commonly seen in University of Waterloo. Silicon Valley VC always go there to hunt for good startups to invest. Well, our office, we have 4 floors in Tsim Sha Tsui and Oxford Terrace, very humble space, but one thing's very special, they design it, meaning the classmates design it, we don't. We have TEDx, our own version, Friday. Management are not allowed. Cherry and internal pitch day. You have all been to pitch days. You have been to pitch days for these co-working spaces, incubation, and accelerators, while we do pitch days internally. And we have a Cheradise social and sports events. The pitch day is to teach us one thing, not to encourage employees or classmates to build something new and then leave the company. Well, if they can do that, good enough to do that, I'll support it. But mostly, is let them experience creating from their own idea and failing. So it's very simple, we give out 3 awards, just 4 slides, 5 minutes, talk. And they are free to form teams. Failure is the norm, and it is not the failure itself, but what you do after that to pivot that we want to focus on. It is not the technology, it's the user experience and the creativity. And one thing we are quite different, we have almost 300 people, but not all are technology people from the same field of what we do. We hire movie directors, we hire special effects, gamers, 3D specialists, so that we can create things like augmented reality. Since 6 years ago, we built iButterfly, which is similar to Pokemon Go, 4 years ago, before Pokemon Go. And that's in Jonathan's coined term, Medica effect, bringing people from different disciplines to create something great. Now, I think McKinsey has missed one point, and that point is the 6th enabler. Fail fast, fail big, fail forward. I think there are speakers earlier today which talk about, a lot of merits in failing. If I were to hire someone, the more senior that person is, the more I look at whether they have failed before. Reason is given by Jack Ma. The success recipe is usually unique, but common mistakes are usually common. So learn from that. Looking at people's success sometimes does give you very little insight. Mistakes, often a lot. Now, first of all, to learn about failing big, failing forward, and failing fast, you have to forget about what you know about success and failure first. I really got inspired by Kendo. Kendo's philosophy is very different from traditionally what we learn from schools. From schools, we say, okay, be grateful when you win, right? Thank everyone. And reflect on what happened if you lose, right? Actually, it's totally the other way around. You should thank your opponent if you lose, because your opponent is teaching you something. You should reflect if you win. Reflect on how you repeat that. Now, keep this in mind, and imagine cherry picks trying to have that philosophy, or at least from the CEO level, and then combine with this. This is essentially a Steve Jobs idol. It's an inventor, the founder of Polaroid, Edwin Land. Basically, he invented instant photography when photography itself is new, and instant photography was considered magic in 1970s. So Do not do something that somebody else can do. Take risks and do something that is nearly impossible but manifestly important. So with this concept, we venture ourselves into many, many, many difficult tasks, right? We built all the betting apps for Jockey Club and then transferred to them. We built the most difficult apps and the biggest scale platform that we can find in Hong Kong. We built mobile banking platform partially for Hong Kong Bank for 33 countries. And then we did TVB, and ouch, we hit a problem. The first universal suffrage in Hong Kong was done with Miss Hong Kong, and one of the time we actually had a disaster. Now that gave me great lessons. In fact, overall, it was net positive because people know about us. As long as we fail forward, fix it, learn from it, then I think people will forgive you and give you a higher praise, a higher confidence. So Elon said, you haven't tried anything if you have not failed. And I like, of course, Drew. Well, you can fail many times, you just have to be right once. So we cannot promise that we will never fail. In fact, we fail a lot, but we'll never fail to try. Okay, Act 2, and this is the last part of the McKinsey report, running tight on time. Act 2 is about if something gets saturated or something went wrong in Act 1, how do you pivot to Act 2 so that the company gets growth sustainably? Now, there were 3 strategies. If what you're doing in Act 1 already works, you try to be rocket ships. You go to a new market, you go to new outlets, you go to new categories. So Google did that, Microsoft did that, everybody did that. Adjacent buyers, well, try to replicate and look at the next phase that you want to invest in and do M&As. NetDragon did that. They started, grew, and sold MMORPG game platform to Sina. Then, at the same time, start Android store called 91 Wireless, built it to the second largest in the world, sold it to Baidu for $1.9 billion US, and then at the same time start e-learning and O2O by acquisition of CherryPix and Promethean. The third is a transformer. Build your core product into a platform. So NetDragon is definitely in Act 2. Well, this basically goes back to what I said before. Once you are a super grower, why do you need Act 2? Maybe just like me, at times when the growth was slow, we'll just accept it and just say, oh, we grow slower. Maybe we'll go better next year. Actually, they are saying it doesn't exist because when you're super growth, super high growth, and then normal growth or slow growth, you will never come back. Only 12% or 22% make it back to super grower once you slow down. So you need Act 2. Now, we talked about grow fast. We've talked very little about die slow. I think it's exactly the flip side, plus this. If you look at strategy and execution, right, ultimately you do both right, then you're great. Strategy is doing the right things, execution is doing things right. Now, if you do both right, you thrive. Second, so if you do very good strategy, very bad execution, then you survive. Of course, if you go bad, then you die fast. And if you do execution very well, but in the wrong place, then you actually die slow. That really inspired me to think that when I have slow growth, I actually might be executing okay, but I'm chasing after the wrong thing. So to me, whatever it is, I think lean startup will solve most of these problems when it comes to strategy and execution. Obviously, everyone can refer to Eric's book. A few highlights here. I'll just comment on 2 things. One is failure. The other is product process. We talk a lot about product development, design thinking, open architecture, and community collaboration just now in the panel. I think there is no one-size-fits-all. I think the DNA, the target product, and the way of doing things is about the culture of your company. The premise is, whatever gets you faster, grow bigger, you should choose to do that. Don't fit At one time, we're trying to fit everybody into these methodology and framework. We found very difficult. Even today, we and some banks say that we're doing agile. Actually, technically, we're not. But we're adopting different parts of agile methodology together with Waterfront to make it work. I think that's the reality. Whatever will generate the speed that you need, whatever will generate the growth that you need, do that. So, grow fast, die slow. I think, just a quick recap, grow fast is trumping everything. It generates higher return, a longer term success, a better prediction. Growth is more important than margin and cost. Growth happens in phases. Prelude, Act 1 and Act 2, with 5 enablers, and I think 6 in Act 1, 3 strategies for Act 2. And lean approach actually works quite well, given the McKinsey finding. I hope you enjoy what I have talked about. Thank you. We still have 10 minutes for...
I can take this one.
Okay, I'll just take it sequentially then. From anonymous source, the question is, some companies were hurt by growing too fast. What could be other factors to consider it? I'll just press, right? Okay, I'll repeat the question. Some companies were hurt by growing too fast. What could be other factors to consider? Not consider. Well, I think the first statement, growing too fast, is there such a thing? Fast is relative, I think. But the state of mind is growing fast means that you are stretching yourself and you are going after one target. Remember, growing fast means generating revenue. If your product is not even generating revenue, you're not even talking about growing fast. Right? So if you are generating revenue and growing fast, can you be hurt by growing fast? We're talking about quarter by quarter, month by month. This MOM, this, some people will call it MRR, monthly recurring revenue, and monthly, month-by-month growth, right? We're referring to that. And the other factors to consider, of course, everything else matter. We're just talking about growth trumps all, but your cost, your margin, it cannot be out of whack. But you know that no matter how much you invest in R&D, no matter how much you invest in marketing and sales, at the end of the day, it shows little correlation. It might help tactically. It might help for a period, if you believe that statistics. Next question, also from Anonymous. How do you keep the company vibrant and aligned at 2,000, 200, or 300 people? Well, it's a challenge for me. NetDragon managed 6,000 people, Tencent, 20,000, Microsoft, 150,000. For me, 200 to 300 people, intellectually stimulating job would keep them going. Interesting environment, and most important of all, some purpose to their work. And I think the magic formula for me is make that 200 to 300 people into the best manageable unit that we have encountered in the past, which is about 50 to 80 people. And that's why we form SEAL teams. So SEAL teams is our focus. Now, SEAL team has a lot of problems. The problems are you build these walls among these teams so that they may not be as cooperative with each other compared to the past where everybody is in one company, all right? So they would tend to share less resources. So there are pros and cons. So each SEAL team, the leaders needs to be strong and they need to know what they're doing. But ultimately, with that focus and that size, best sweet spot for management. You mentioned you adopted some practice from some Silicon Valley companies. Can you elaborate on some successful adoptions? There were a few things. I think knowledge sharing, definitely we have referenced a lot from Silicon Valley. We even adopted a few things from Google, like a pet project. It was quite a nightmare when we hear that there were another peer companies, a friend of mine who ran another company, started a pet project idea, meaning allowing employees to do their own pet project unrelated to the company on Friday afternoon, right? Unquestioned by the company. They were all doing freelancing. So I think it's something to do with culture and something to do with whether you're at a stage where you can execute on this policy. Pitch Day is an idea that we borrow from also a Silicon Valley startup. They didn't call it Pitch Day, but for us, for easy communication, we call it Pitch Day. And in the Pitch Day, there were 16 teams with real business ideas and presentation. Very, very interesting. Incentives, I think, is another thing that we copy from Silicon Valley, and we found that share option doesn't work in Hong Kong. I think it might work if it is a fresh startup, but we already have so many people, and some people have been a salary receiver for such a long period of time, it may not work for us. So we have instant share award or money award. We'll consider ESOP, the employee share option scheme, again, once we submit, if we do, for IPO. Because once you have that target, it becomes basically valuable. Are SEAL teams responsible? Yes, of course. SEAL teams are companies. So essentially, we have 4 startups inside CherryPix. They're responsible for all the P&Ls. So I'm an overhead. If the company is good, why we should sell it? Good question. There are many private reasons. For me, if I were to be very concise and succinct about it, we tried many times to go into China and to go global as a company. Last time we tried, it was 2006 and 2007. We lost 20 million US dollar. Going into China is hard, especially for us on applications. If we were to build another business by going into China ourselves, I'm not sure whether I stand a better chance than last time. So for CherryPix to have sold to NetDragon, and now I become the 2nd largest shareholder, but still a minority one, was based on several reasons. The first one is we hope that NetDragon's network, channels, and brand in China can let us stand on their shoulder of a giant so that we can do business and penetrate China successfully. We're still working on that. But obviously, at least for opening doors, that was quite effective. And because you have such backing, I think it's easier to get some partnership going. So it's about going to China, just a different strategy. Second, obviously, you have to think about 10x, right? No matter whether you're a startup or a big companies. Think about 10x. What would generate 10x for you? It's just another way to tell you growth, 10x. So for us to do 10x, doing it in a small pond way by ourselves into China, take another risk, which I've tried before, lost 20 million. Now, I actually do it with a big pond, smaller share, but on the back of NetDragon. And I think that can give me 10x. Second reason is NetDragon wants to go global, and they committed to let us operate independently and allow us to go execute on our roadmap for IPO. So since 2014 to now, not a single NetDragon executive comes to work in CherryPix. So it's pretty much the same as before. We just have more opportunities, and we go global pretty easily. Obviously, the problems with culture and all these do exist. We just have to deal with it. Okay, the next question from Cecilia. I like the University of Waterloo IP ownership scheme. Hong Kong universities are still very old-fashioned. Any suggestions? Well, I think it goes back to the comment of if you're hungry, you're willing to do things that are out of the box. For the longest time, I think with the pedigree and the tradition and the finance backing of some of the top-notch universities here, there is no urgency, no reason, no danger to threaten their survival. They don't need to change. Waterloo used that policy because they were new. Only a 60-year-old university, very new. Although it becomes the top recruitment university for Google, Facebook, and some of these technology companies from the North America. So do something different, think out of the box, only happens when you're hungry. I'm not sure whether we need to change that, because I think they, meaning Hong Kong U, CU, UST, are finding their own ways to incubate startups, spin off invention, and collaborate with industries and government. And government is giving them funding to do that, just to make sure, just make sure that they are not overly funded and too well funded to be comfortable. So I don't think we need to change that. They need to find their own way to address that problem. I think that's all I have on the laptop.
Well, join me in another round of applause for Mr. Chu. Really appreciate your talk. It was very interesting. I particularly like the beginning part when you were mentioning slow to low growth was essentially tantamount to dying in certain situations. I know that permeates through a lot of competitive industries, whether it be even athletics or the business industry, and even in the startup community, it is a very competitive industry. And when your competitors are improving and growing, slow growth or no growth, and there's no such thing as being stagnant, because if you had a competitive advantage, it's been being eaten up. So you are only growing or essentially getting worse.
Absolutely, yes.
So I really appreciate that point. At this stage, I'd like to invite Ian Huang to the stage to present a certificate of appreciation. Also, so we'll have the wine presentation for the questions. And the Q&A winner for this session will be Dr. Mao Wang. Oh, there it is. It's already up here. Oh, there it is. I'll share the moment with you if I can't share the wine. Thank you, appreciate it. So with that, we are at the end of our program today. I would like to bring Ian back to the stage, if you will. I'd like to thank you all for sticking this out with us through the day, especially if you've been here since the morning. I hope that, again, we were informative, that you were entertained, and that also that you're inspired to go forth into the Hong Kong community and help support some of these startups, help get in the ear of some of the investors, or maybe pool some funds of you and your friends and your colleagues to help foster the innovative environment that we're trying to start here. Sorry. Oh, well then, I'd like to, at this point, I will get a certificate of appreciation. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right. That's a great surprise. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ian. Thank you.
Well, Jamel, have you considered changing your career?
I might.
Oh, I guess it's yours.
Yes.
I will take it away from him. Thank you very much. I really wish and hope that we, cooperative of innovative intellectuals, has contributed something to Hong Kong in the area of promoting real innovations. That is what I like to see happen, and I think our people also like to see that. And thank you very much for coming. We are really appreciate it. Okay. Dr. Mo Wang, please. Presenting the best question. I don't know who comes. Oh, okay. Last question, Dr. Cecilia Chen. Thank you. All right, so thank you. Don't want to take up more of your time, and hope to see you soon. We will have the similar one. We have one in Shanghai in March. Hopefully, some of you will, go with us to over there. And we also have great speakers. We have Dr. Dilip Bendaga. We have HL. We have Professor Da-Ming Chu of Chinese U Hong Kong. And also we have Mikai and Dr. Tommy Tong, who has been spent all his life in the aerospace industries. So to talk about how to grow innovation talents. And we're co-sponsoring, co-organizing with the Shanghai Association for Science and Technology. All right, thank you very much.